Gold is a substance like no other. It is beautiful, desirable, rare, and valuable. Its appeal is almost universal across cultures and across time. From the very earliest times, gold has played a leading role in the drama of human history. Gold gives glory to our gods and inspiration to our artists. It has formed the bedrock of our wealth. Gold drove the engines of the world's economy for centuries. The story of gold is the history of an obsession. Savuka Gold Mine in South Africa, nearly 4 kilometers below ground. The earth does not give up its treasure without a fight. Savuka is the deepest mine in the world, and they are still digging. This far down, the heat from the Earth's core would make working impossible without powerful air conditioning. No other substance in human history has driven people to such extremes, and the struggle continues today. Retrieving the gold is a complex process. It takes 140,000 kilos of rock and ore to produce just 1 kilo of gold. The smelted gold is cast into rough bars. Every day, a ton of rough gold is delivered by helicopter to Johannesburg's Rand refinery. Security is tight. Here, the gold will be processed to almost complete purity. The bars are 99.88% pure. Each one is worth nearly $140,000. In its pure form, gold is the most beautiful of the Earth's elements.
It is related to the sun in the sense that it reflects the color of the sun. It comes from the bowels of the earth, and it has been forged by the great heat of early times.
And since early times, its otherworldly beauty has captivated people. Nothing else in the natural world looks and feels quite like gold. Throughout history, people have used gold to make their most precious possessions. Gold is rare. If it were as common as sand or salt, it would not be so desirable. Almost all the gold ever produced still exists. If it were put in a single pile, it would fit in the space beneath the Eiffel Tower. As a metal, gold has some remarkable properties. A single ounce can be stretched into a wire 80 kilometers long. It can be beaten into gold leaf that is just 2/millionths of a centimeter thick. A little gold can go a long way.
Oui, donc l'or a quelque chose de très particulier, c'est que c'est le métal le plus ductible qui existe, c'est-à-dire qu'on peut étendre et aplatir le plus possible.
Gold doesn't rust or fade. It is chemically inert. It can't be harmed by water, air, or even most acids. Golden treasure can be buried for 1,000 years and still shine as brightly as on the day it was made. It is no surprise that such a remarkable natural substance has been regarded as supernatural. Because it seems to last forever, it is trusted more than anything else to outlive troubled times. We believe it will always be valued.
Pourquoi est-ce que depuis la naissance de l'humanité, l'homme était amoureux de l'or? Il y a quand même quelque chose d'extraordinaire là, que je ne m'explique pas, mais que je constate.
It is timeless, and maybe there is an echo in that in all of us, that we'd all like to be timeless in some way, but gold has the sense of that where it comes across the centuries in its original state.
The immortality of gold has given it sacred properties. We use it to create images of our gods. But gold also appeals to less sacred impulses. Human greed for gold has destroyed whole civilizations. And the search for gold has damaged many parts of our environment forever. The story of people and gold is not rich with happy endings. The poet and philosopher John Ruskin considered how greed for gold took over men's lives. He told the story of a man who carried a bag of gold coins to sea. A storm blew up and all on board abandoned ship. The man held his bag of coins and jumped in. The gold dragged him to his death. Ruskin asked about the drowning man, had he the gold, or did the gold have him? Our relationship with gold throws up many contradictions.
Nobody needs gold except for adornment. It's basically useless stuff. It's too soft to do anything kind of, you can't build with it or anything like that. But useless things make the best kinds of money because if something is useful, you don't want to use it to trade, you need it.
Demand for this supposedly useless substance remains as high as ever. South Africa alone produces 500 tons a year. We use it for jewelry, electronics, in medicine and art, and most of all, it still measures and secures much of our wealth. The human obsession for gold has shaped our history. Our story begins at the birth of civilization. To the ancient Egyptians, gold came from the sun. It was considered the flesh and bones of the gods. For the people of the Nile, the farmers and laborers, gold was distant and exclusive. It belonged to the gods and their living representatives on earth, the pharaohs. Egyptian craftsmen worked gold into intricate jewelry and religious objects. The Egyptians ran gold mines in the western desert and in Nubia, south of their kingdom, which they called the Land of Gold. For the pharaohs and priests who ran Egypt, gold advertised power. It showed how close the rulers were to the gods. supplies of gold in Egypt were limited. Craftsmen perfected the art of gilding.
La dorure a dû être commencée à peu près au temps des Égyptiens, la dorure à la feuille d'or. On a retrouvé de la dorure vraiment à la feuille d'or, seulement les feuilles d'or étaient plus épaisses, mais c'était les mêmes procédés.
Egyptians chose gold to accompany them on their most important journey, their passage to the afterlife. Gold was indestructible, so perfect for immortality. Everyday objects made of gold were buried in the tomb for use by the occupant in their next life. And pharaohs were buried encased in gold. It lasted forever, as they believed they would themselves. On the other side of the world, the peoples of ancient America built a series of civilizations. The place gold held in their societies has many echoes with ancient Egypt. People believed gold was sacred and came from the gods. It was considered to contain the power of the sun. The Andes and the jungles of the Amazon were rich sources of gold. It was pure and easy to collect, but it remained exclusive.
Amongst the Inca, we know that only the Inca and the highest Inca nobility were allowed to own and wear gold. We also know that all the gold and silver in the vast empire of the Incas was the property of the Inca himself. Gold to the ancient Americans also had a lot of religious and symbolic meaning. The Inca thought of gold as the rain of the sun, and the sun was of course a major deity in the vast pantheon of the Incas. The material was so beautiful and so brilliant, indestructible, a magnificent color, that the ancient Americans thought it must be of divine origin. And the Aztecs of Mexico, the word for gold is Teotihuacán, which means, translated, excrement of the gods. So there is this connection to the spiritual world.
Gold has a place in nearly all our religions and myths. In the Bible, God instructs Moses to build a tabernacle covered in gold, the only metal that will do justice to his sacred purpose. But when Moses saw his people worshipping a golden calf, he saw love of gold taking over from love of God. In his anger, he threw down the 10 Commandments. Gold was important in the rich mythology of ancient Greece. To the Greeks, gold belonged to a different world. It was the stuff of heaven. Much of its mystique came from the fact that while the Greeks had plenty of silver, they had very little gold. That made it even more exotic.
Gold means what is foreign and what is attractive because it's exotic, but it also means what is divine.
The ancient Greeks believed in a mythical golden age. Ordinary people didn't have to work. In this distant past, the seas were full of fish and the land gave them all the food they could eat. People didn't know what misery was. They even made everyday objects from gold. With the age of gold past, the ancient Greeks associated their own times with less exotic metals. They believed they lived in the age of iron. In the story of gold, myth and reality often merge. A real historical figure who is associated with gold can give birth to legends. One man whose real life is no more than a shadow has a name that will forever be associated with gold. King Midas. When offered the gift of a golden touch, he found it impossible to refuse. But his gift became a curse. He turned food, drink, and even his daughter into gold. To get rid of the magic touch, Midas had to wash in the river Pactolus, which, the legend tells us, ran with gold ever after. The river Pactolus still flows through modern-day Turkey, and it has been a rich source of electrum, a natural mixture of gold and silver. There was a real Midas, the ruler of a kingdom called Phrygia. The Pactolus flowed close to his land and brought him riches, which made him famous in the ancient world. The burial mounds of the kings of Phrygia can still be seen in western Turkey.
He was a very glamorous and rich king that struck the imagination and that the Greeks found particularly fascinating. He came from the east and he had lots of gold and he made offerings to the own oracles of Delphi. So many of his golden artifacts could be found and viewed in Greece itself.
And the golden wealth was not confined to the Phrygian kingdom of Midas. His neighbors to the west, the Lydians, built a powerful empire. Over 2,500 years ago, the Lydians built their capital, Sardis, on the banks of the river Pactolus. It was a busy place, well sited on the trade routes of the time. With their supplies of precious metals, the Lydians here in Sardis came up with one of the most important inventions of the ancient world. They used their electrum, the mixture of gold and silver from the river, to make coins. The British Museum in London holds one of the best collections of coins in the world. And the 2,600-year-old story of coinage begins with small, thick, round pieces of electrum made by the Lydians.
Here we have what are, so far as we can tell, the earliest coins ever produced. They were made in the area of Lydia. They were produced probably by the Lydian kings in that area, and they were made of electrum. We don't know why they used electrum, but it may be something to do with the fact that the alloy occurs naturally in the river Pactolus, which flows through the capital of the Lydian kingdom, Sardis.
The proof that these were the oldest coins came when archaeologists uncovered a hoard of them beneath the ancient city of Ephesus. Ephesus was a bustling port at the end of the royal road that ran from the east and passed through Sardis. The coins with their royal stamp were guaranteed by the kings of Lydia for weight and purity. They have been accurately dated to around 635 BC. They were a revolution for the ancient world. The fact that they were found in Ephesus means it was a revolution that had spread beyond the kingdom of Lydia to the shores of the Mediterranean. And can we be sure it really was a Lydian invention?
The surest evidence for the Lydian-ness of those coins are the Lydian inscriptions which occur on some of them. We don't know what those inscriptions mean, or it's not generally understood, but the alphabet is the Lydian alphabetic system.
Previously, people had traded in anything from livestock to seashells. Now there was something that worked better. They were portable and widely trusted. People didn't have to weigh little pieces of metal every time they wanted to make a transaction. The Lydians took advantage of their invention. The people of Sardis were known for selling anything, even their daughters. But there was still a problem. Because they were made of the alloy electrum, people couldn't be sure how much of the high-value gold was mixed with the lower-value silver. The Lydians solved this problem too.
These rather unprepossessing little walls with the modern shelters, protective shelters over them, are the installations where the natural alloy of electrum was separated into gold and silver.
The Lydians had created the first gold refinery. By combining separation technology with their skills at making coins, they created something very desirable. In the Lydian Royal Mint, they struck the world's first pure gold coins. And the creator of those coins was the Lydian king, Croesus. His name has become a byword for fabulous wealth.
I suppose there are three aspects to the attractiveness of gold as a monetary metal. I mean, the first would be that it's simply attractive. It looks nice. The second is that it's soft and therefore it's relatively easy to work and produces a very nice design when you strike it with coin dies. And the third, I mean, a very practical one, is there isn't so much to go round that everybody has access to it. So it is something that cuts off a certain part of the population who have it from those who do not.
The gold and silver coins minted in Sardis were the world's first metal currency. It was a system that was to last throughout the world for 2,000 years. The coins were popular and spread across the Aegean Sea to Greece and around Asia Minor. They stimulated trade and increased the wealth and power of Lydia. Croesus was known as the richest man in the world. He wanted to expand his empire. Thinking his wealth made him invincible, he planned to attack the Persians. Croesus sought the advice of the oracle at Delphi before his battle. The oracle predicted that Croesus would destroy a great empire. Confident, he went to war with the Persians. After a siege at Sardis, the Lydians lost.
At that point, he is angry and he wants to know why the oracle lied to him despite the fact that he had given him so many presents. And the oracle says, I didn't lie. A great kingdom was destroyed, but it was your kingdom.
Although the Lydians lost an empire, their capital, Sardis, remained an important city. Over the centuries, it was run by the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. The greatest legacy of the Lydians was a system of coinage. The Persians took charge of the royal mint and issued their own versions of the gold and silver currency. Persian kings put images of themselves on their coins. The spread of coins literally put gold into the hands of many more people. And they had other advantages for the rulers of the ancient world.
The important thing to remember, of course, is that coinage is really the only mass medium in the ancient world. There are no newspapers, there's no radio or television. The only way you can really spread a simple message a long way in a mass-produced form is on coinage.
One man, Alexander the Great, understood this perfectly. The young Macedonian king made a series of whirlwind conquests across the ancient world. By the time he was 26, he had built an empire that stretched from Egypt to India. And he used coins to let everyone know of his achievements. Alexander used well-known images from Greek mythology. The goddess Nike represented victory. Athena was shown as a warrior goddess. The message was clear. Alexander brought success in battle. He made sure the gold coins circulated throughout his empire. Alexander's triumphs in battle and conquest were surpassed only by the Romans. They built the greatest empire the world had ever known. Rome was a vast military and economic machine, and it needed gold to fuel its progress. For the Romans, gold was both sacred and worldly. They used to store their reserves on the Capitoline Hill in the center of the city, in a temple dedicated to their most powerful god, Jupiter. In Roman legend, they nearly lost all their gold to a band of invaders from Gaul. The city was under attack. A group of the enemy's soldiers had got to the Capitoline Hill, undetected by the Romans. It was only the cackling of a flock of geese that alerted the guards. The Gauls were captured. The city and its gold were safe. The Romans were so grateful, they built a new shrine to the goddess of warning, Juno Moneta. Her name was ever after associated with gold. Moneta became the Latin word for money. If the Romans gave us the word for money, they had also a constant need for the real thing. Conquest was expensive. The Romans took over most of the known world. At its height, the empire stretched from Hadrian's Wall to North Africa. But victory brought problems, as well as glory.
Questo da un lato porta nuove ricchezze perché si scoprono miniere di metalli preziosi, miniere d'oro. Dall'altra parte aumenta il fabbisogno di monete d'oro per pagare questi eserciti di ormai professionisti.
The solution came when the Romans conquered Spain and took possession of the area of Las Medulas. The Red Mountains of Las Medulas were rich in gold ore. They gave the Romans the secure and seemingly endless supply they needed. In their quest for gold, the Roman miners changed this landscape forever. They took down whole cliffs and built networks of tunnels and shafts throughout the mountains. The scarred landscape is still testament to their efforts. It was hard work, Even with thousands of slaves, it was a slow, painstaking process, too slow to satisfy their needs.
Estamos en el interior de una montaña, estamos en el vientre de la montaña, una montaña que los romanos llegaron a destrozar para tratar de buscar el oro que tanto necesitaban para mantener su imperio. Un imperio que se mantenía fundamentalmente pues, en soldados mercenarios, en un sistema de esclavos, que por tanto todo ello requería una gran cantidad de oro que obtenían en cualquier zona fundamentalmente de Europa, del norte de África, de Asia, pero también aquí en el noroeste de la península ibérica.
To speed up production, the Roman engineers came up with a clever solution. In an age before heavy machinery and explosives, they used the power of water under pressure to get at their gold. For water supplies, the Romans used snow from a neighboring mountain range. The melted snow water had to be transported across country back to the gold mines. They built a network of canals to carry the water. Some of them were up to 100 kilometers long. The water was stored in reservoirs while the pressure built up. In Las Medulas, they dug tunnels to channel the water into the heart of the mountains. When there was enough pressure, the water would be released. It rushed into the tunnels and was channeled through narrowing passages. The force was enough to blast the gold ore from the mountain.
Plinio, el historiador latino, lo ha llegado a definir como la ruina montium, la ruina de la montaña, ¿no? Porque la montaña estallaba.
Despite the environmental damage of Roman gold extraction, there is still enough ore in the surrounding area to make modern mining profitable.
Esta roca que tengo a la mano es la roca que contiene el mineral de oro que se extrae en el yacimiento del Valle, en el concejo de Belmonte de Miranda, y que contiene y que va a ser tratada en la planta de obtención de oro.
Modern extraction and processing techniques make this a very efficient operation. The mine produces 5.5 tons of gold every year, more than the Romans could have dreamed of.
Según los últimos datos de las excavaciones arqueológicas, de los estudios de los investigadores, han llegado a una conclusión de que los romanos han sacado entre 4.000 y 5.000 kilos de oro. Es decir, 200 años, 4.000, 5.000 kilos de oro, ¿no? Parece imposible. Pero en la antigüedad el oro circulante era muy poco. Por tanto, quien tenía esa poca cantidad de oro, pues era realmente el dueño del mundo. Y en aquel caso era Roma.
In Rome, owning gold was vital. It bought favors at all levels. This was the first society obsessed by private wealth. One very rich and influential man came to represent this new attitude: Crassus. He bought his way to everything and dreamed of a place in history as a great general. But he failed in battle with the Parthians. His enemies killed him in a fitting way. To mark his obsession with wealth, they poured molten gold down his throat. Roman gold supplies were always outstripped by demand. Whatever new sources they found, they always wanted more. The empire was a single currency zone. Coins circulated all over this vast area, and they kept the Roman economic machine functioning. There was always a temptation for the emperor to make limited gold supplies go further. By secretly adding cheaper metals, more coins could be made with less gold and silver. But if people found out, they wouldn't trust the currency. And unscrupulous members of the public could also damage the coinage. By clipping little bits from the edge of coins, gold could be stolen from the state. The public lost faith in the currency. Money lost value. Inflation rose as bit by bit the coins weighed less. With a weak economy came a weak empire. The first Christian emperor, Constantine the Great, decided to take matters under control. He moved the center of his empire away from the corruption of Rome to a city he named after himself, Constantinople. In his new capital, which is modern-day Istanbul, he set about building a formidable new empire based on trade and Christianity.
Constantinople, situated at the crossroads between East and West, and with easy access to mineral and natural resources, really rewarded the vision of its founder, and it was to develop into an international dream city of Christendom for over a millennium.
Trade flourished. Constantine minted a new gold coin, the solidus. It was his crowning achievement. Pure gold, never debased, and so successful it is known as the dollar of the Middle Ages.
The dollar of the Middle Ages, this is a very appropriate expression. The same way the Athenian silver coins of the 5th and 4th century circulated widely and were accepted, the same way the dollar or even the British pound is accepted now, the Byzantine solidus was accepted everywhere and was valued as a very fine coin.
The solidus was used as far away as China, Britain, and Scandinavia. It became one of the longest-lived coins in history. Constantinople was the center of the world. Its wealth on show in great buildings like the Church of Santa Sofia. Its dome was lined with 12 tons of gold. It was filled with lavish mosaics. Constantinople became a city of gold, its artists and craftsmen the finest in the world. Gold became an obsession for wealthy emperors. One even put the sacred image of Christ on the gold solidus. Religious mosaics became ever more elaborate. People wondered if the emperors were showing devotion to the glory of God or the glory of gold. There was a backlash. A change was forced. The cross was the only image to be allowed. Coins were issued with simple designs. Rich mosaics were torn down. The emperors added yet more gold to their coffers. As Constantinople thrived in the east, the remains of the Roman Empire in the west fell apart, plunging Europe into the Dark Ages. People moved away from towns and cities, back to small settlements, closer to the land. Law and order fell apart, and in these uncertain times people hoarded their gold, hoping to keep it safe from plunder. With so much gold under the ground or hidden away, there was much less money circulating. With money largely out of use, trade dried up, the economy withered. The gold which had driven the Roman machine was being kept for better days.
By the 7th century, they'd stopped using gold. Economists and historians argue why this was. It may simply have been that the patterns of trade that bring in gold from the main areas of gold production in Africa and the East simply weren't there anymore. So there was not enough was coming through to be able to fuel a coinage.
But it was also a time of great religious faith. In the monasteries, monks celebrated God in intricate illuminated manuscripts, and they wanted gold to shine from their work. Because it was scarce, they only used tiny amounts of powdered gold mixed with egg white and then painted on to their finely detailed manuscripts. It was painstaking and frustrating work. Forced by hard times, the craftsmen of Dark Ages Europe began a tradition that continues to this day. They pressed gold into ever thinner sheets. Just 1 ounce of gold can be made into gold leaf that would cover 100 square feet. Applied to furniture or buildings, the gold leaf glitters as if it were solid.
La notion de feuille d'or est apparue très vite. Dès que l'homme a eu entre les mains une pépite d'or, il a tapé dessus pour lui donner une forme. Et l'homme étant curieux, je dirais que dès qu'il a commencé à voir que la feuille d'or la pépite d'or s'allongeait, il a voulu la pousser à l'extrême. Et on est très vite arrivé à des feuilles d'or qui étaient beaucoup plus épaisses qu'aujourd'hui. Mais déjà, du temps des pharaons, on avait des feuilles d'or qui étaient très fines, qui étaient battues entre des papyrus.
Stretching small amounts of gold became an art form in itself. It sparked a trend. Gilding was applied to everything, from chairs to church roofs. In 750 AD, Britain was still divided into several warring kingdoms. Gold was scarce and money little used. But that was about to change. Offa, the powerful king of Mercia, ruled a large territory. He began minting coins and was able to build a currency that became the envy of Northern Europe and lasted for 500 years. He had little gold, so used silver from Cornwall. He kept a close eye on the quality of his coinage. British money gained a reputation for purity and integrity. A reputation that is guarded to this day. Every year in London, a 700-year-old ceremony takes place. Every new coin produced by the Royal Mint is checked for weight and purity. A verdict is produced.
It's a very, very long verdict. Every coin that has been checked and assayed and tested is recorded in the verdict, and it is read out aloud to the public in the hall behind us, so that the public can hear that the coinage of their realm is up to standard.
Europe emerged from its dark ages into a period of great energy and improvement. Cathedrals were built and universities founded. Armies left Europe on crusades to return the Holy Land to the Christian faith. In the 13th century, rulers of newly prosperous states in Western Europe minted their own gold coins in rapid succession. It was a financial crusade. Coins that would rival the solidus from Constantinople. The most powerful of the European cities was Venice. Well located for trading and maritime power, the gold flowed in. Venetian goldsmiths became famous for their work. Wealthy leaders and merchants covered the city in gold. Constantinople was left behind. The city and culture of the Byzantine Empire was crumbling. Even their remarkable gold coins were coming to the end of their life after nearly 1,000 years of supremacy. The massive walls of Constantinople had kept out invaders for centuries. Eventually, a weakened city fell to Mehmet the Conqueror, a Muslim invader who breached the defenses and galloped through the city's gate to take control.
In 1453, Constantinople was sacked by the Turks, and this really marks the end of a millennium history of glory and of much, much wealth.
The future of Constantinople was to lie with Islam. A new empire of the Ottoman sultans dawned. To the west, troubles loomed on the horizon. A century of war and plague in Europe lay ahead. Time so bad, money didn't seem to matter. But the glint of gold wouldn't stay hidden for long. In the next program, we travel to a new world. Gold drives Europeans across the ocean to the Americas. Explorers, adventurers, and thieves. They find more gold than they could have dreamed of, and plunder whole civilizations. Europe is awash with gold. More gold than ever before.